everybody, and welcome back to BU Inspirational Interviews. I have a very special guest here with me today. He is one of the members of Hieroglyphics crew. We are actually in the studio space that you use to record the iconic songs that you guys have all heard. But it was so random. I was at the Wu-Tang show in San Francisco, and I saw him, and I was like, "You're Domino." And he's like, "Yeah." And then I got up the courage to ask him for an interview. So here we are. Domino, can you tell the viewers, maybe those who are not based in the Bay Area, who you are and a little bit about you and Hieroglyphics?
Yeah, my name is Domino. I'm with the crew called Hieroglyphics, which consists of Del the Funky Homo Sapien, the Souls of Mischief, which are Opio, Tajay, Festo, and A+, Casual, Pep Love, DJ Teray, and myself. And we're a hip-hop collective out of the Bay Area, as she said. My main part, I guess, in Hiero as a producer, and I've done management and ran our label for a long time. So I'm a little bit on both sides of it, but that's kind of what I do.
Yeah, and when was Hieroglyphics first created?
Hieroglyphics was created before even I knew them, which was probably in the early 90s. And it was a bunch of guys, I think Del, A+, Tajay, all grew up in the same neighborhood, Casual. They all kind of grew up in the East Oakland neighborhood, and a lot of them went to school together, and they just kind of had a collective love for hip hop and rhyming, and that drew them together. And then later on, other members kind of joined. Festo, I knew, and then he also was from Oakland. And then Pep Love, who I know they went to school with, and then I came along later, and I'm from San Francisco.
Awesome. What year did you?
When I met them, I believe in 1991.
Okay.
And the story behind that is I used to rent out a studio in the back of a record store called Groove Merchant Records out of San Francisco. And they're still there, but this was at a different location with a different owner. And a gentleman by the name of Dante Ross, who at the time was an A&R at Elektra Records, came in, and somehow the owner of the record store commented that, I have this guy in the back, he makes beats, or he's raps or whatever. And me and Dante met before as a friendship, and then at some point he heard what I was doing, at least on the beat wise, and he was like, "Yo, you're dope. You should hook up with this. I just signed this guy, Scoop's cousin, Del the Funky Homo Sapien. He's in Oakland. He has a whole crew of guys. You should hook up with them, And so he connected us, and we hooked up, and that's kind of how it happened. And this was, I want to say, early 1991, probably.
Yeah, because when I started listening to Hieroglyphics, it was, I think, in 2000 or 2001, and you were already a part of it. So
yeah, that's we had been together for a while by that point.
Yeah. So what does it? Because if you are in the Bay Area, you know who Hieroglyphics is, like, no doubt about it. How does it feel to be? There's actually like a Hiero Day in the city, right?
Yeah,
like
in Oakland. Yeah.
Oh, it's in Oakland.
Yeah.
I think it was in the city one time. No. No. Okay.
So,
yeah. So I've been to a couple of those as well. But how does that feel to be part of something so iconic?
I don't know. Like, I don't think of it that way. I mean, obviously, the obvious answer is it feels great, but I think my aim is always just to, at least in a creative sense, was to leave a legacy, And so I think that's the most important thing, that we've done music that has connected with people, not just in the Bay Area, all over the world. And that means a lot, because I know, as a big fan of music, that good music transcends the person who made it, the person. That's his legacy, and after he dies, people are still listening to Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley like they're here, And so that was always my first aim, was just like, I just want to do something that that leaves a lasting impression. And so anything above that is just is icing. You know what I mean? But like just the fact that you go around and people have Hiero tattoos and also tell you how much their music meant to them and got them through certain life trials, and somehow it moved them, and that's kind of like a reward every time it happens. And the fact that we've still been doing it for 30 years and there's still people that it's still meaningful, that's a lot, because a lot of people can't say that.
Yeah, for sure. Has there been a time where it was really hard to, like, say, because I know you get recognized, because I was someone that was like, hey. Has it ever been that? What is the downside of that? Has it ever been hard?
Not recognition. Like, I don't think, I think there's certain people that are really into us who would recognize me. I'm probably on the lower scale anyone Hiero who gets recognized, I would think, because I'm not like on the, I'm not one of the front and center guys on the mic. I'm in the back, on the turntables or beat machine or whatever. And obviously, I'm play a smaller role in videos and whatever. And so, yeah, it's never gotten to the point where it's prevented me, where I felt like it was cumbersome or like, I want to have this meal. Like it's never got to that point. I'm still very thankful that for any acknowledgement, because I think that, again, like I think I've been that fan, and so I think it's meaningful for people to be able to come up to you and you give them proper respect for the time that, because I know one of the things I know is that when somebody's a fan of you or a group, the moment that they have for you is gonna, whether good or bad, is gonna last for them. I may not remember it, but I know that when I met Melly Mel and when I met Chuck D and Flavor Flav, that interaction stuck with me, and they don't remember it, of course. And so I think I'm always very cognizant of that this is the moment that when someone's a fan of you, that they're going to remember it whether you treat them well or not. And so I figure I might as well err on the side of being a nice guy,
That's nice. I like that. Dell, so a funny story with Dell, who's also part of Hieroglyphics. When I was 18 or 19, I went to one of his shows, and I had like my little poster, and I was so excited because I was in the front, and he came to greet everybody, and I was like, will you sign my poster? And he's like, yeah. Does anybody have a marker? And then somebody had called him in the back, and he said, I'll be right back. And then I waited for like an hour,
missed it.
And he never came back. And then I had the opportunity years later, I think I was like 25 now, I think. And I met him and his wife, girlfriend at the time. I don't remember who it was, but someone that was with him was there. And I told her the story, and she turned to him and she went, listen to her story. Listen what happened. And she was waiting and waiting. And he's like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I'm telling you, that didn't happen on purpose. Like, I didn't leave you there on purpose. Like, something must have, they called me to do something, and then I got caught up. But I will sign anything you have now. Like, we took pictures and everything, and I have the pictures of that. But I remember, like, he's like, I didn't do that on purpose. Like, I'm not that guy, So
she remembered it, and that's
I remembered
it. Yeah, so that's so luckily it got rectified. Otherwise, you would have just been stuck with, man, I tried to get you left, and I waited an hour. Now at least there's a happy ending.
Yeah. But I mean, I didn't, I figured something, and well, he doesn't have time. But yeah, it was nice that he was like, I'm not that guy. Like, I'll sign whatever. But aside from that, like, how is it balancing family life and like touring all the time and having these appearances and always on the road? Kind of like the song.
It's difficult in some respect, but like there's a lot worse things that I could be doing to make a living. And so, I think the problem is, well, it's twofold, right? I think because I don't have the typical 9-to-5 job, that it allows me a lot more flexibility when I'm home. But obviously when I'm not home, then it's long periods of not seeing them or being able to you know, basically to be there for events or whatever. But like, I think I'd be a lot worse parent if I was at a job that I was unhappy at. And plus my
100%.
daughter is plays guitar. She's a musician. She wants to follow in the music
Oh, that's
footsteps,
awesome.
and so it's kind of like that we have that extra connection because I do this.
Yeah. What's that like to just see someone that you've raised want to follow in your footsteps? Like you're that great of a role model, and she can feel that positivity that you're exuding as you're doing your passion, right? Like follow your passion. So
Yeah,
she's following.
it's amazing. I think most people like if their kids take on something that
Yeah.
they love. Um, but the thing about her is I think she has her own mind, and she also is very driven, and she's not doing hip hop.
Yeah.
She plays guitar. She's more into punk, kind of rock, kind of like Green Day-ish kind
Yeah.
of. And so, I think she's been around enough stuff to that maybe it's just normal, and she doesn't think it's a big deal. But I'm obviously happy because she got the bug that I have, and we actually interact on, she sends me songs, listen to this, I send her, you know what I mean? And so like that's
awesome.
not, that's just nice in itself that we have that music connection, whether or not she wanted to do it as a career or not.
Yeah, but I think having you as an example is like, it paved her way a lot more than the average child would, especially if it's parents that are like, no, you're gonna do this, and this is how they try to pave out their child's
Right.
path for them, versus you just set an example, and she.
Yeah, I think there's some of that. Like I never really pushed her, as she wanted to learn guitar, we bought her a guitar. Like
Yeah.
everything is stuff that she wanted to do.
Yeah.
I probably pushed her more towards sports than she wanted, what
Yeah.
I mean? But like play soccer, whatever. But so she wasn't that interested in that, but she got, caught the bug with the guitar, and so
That's awesome.
it's definitely happened organically.
Yeah. The Grouch's daughter is actually a DJ now.
Right.
And
That's true.
her
Yeah.
passion, I think, by him setting her example, I think that's awesome. That.
I think parents are always an example, no matter what they're doing.
Yes.
And and that's good or bad. And so, thankfully, she's connecting to my best traits. You know what I'm saying? Versus, something else. But, she definitely, yeah. It's good to have an example, and I think seeing your parents love what they do as well probably has a lot to do with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure she sees how much Grouch loves it. And it's like, yeah, I want to be that, still be doing that when I'm older.
Yeah. So did you have an example, or did you find music on your own?
Well, I did have an example. My dad was in a band in the 70s that was signed, had a deal. They were signed to Capitol Records, and so I had that example. But I think most of all, my example was just always tons of music in my life through my mom and my uncle and my father as well. And so it was just a love for music is kind of where it started, and then it obviously transitions to music of my own era. And so I found hip hop, and that became my passion. And so I just think the general sense of love for music in general was probably more the example than seeing my dad in a band. I think it was just the music itself.
Yeah, that's always been your passion.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you worked in the record store?
I didn't work there. What I did was the record store had a storeroom, I guess you consider it, but it was like a studio apartment. And it was just like they would lock it a two-sided door. And so they basically, I guess, were trying to, they wanted to rent that out, and so I rented. And so and during the day they'd open the door and I'd walk into the record store.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was like, so I didn't work there, but your question was?
Well, when you joined Hiero, so I was just kind of getting at, like, you've always been surrounded by music then.
Yes.
Like, even if you didn't work there, you're still, I mean, you're living amongst music, right?
Yeah. By that time, I was already like making beats, and at the time I rhymed, and yeah, and so it was. I guess music has just always been my source of inspiration, you know, for since I can remember.
Yeah.
You know, I'm also very much into sports, so it's all my life has always been sports and music, pretty much.
What kind of sports?
All of them. But football is my favorite, but baseball, basketball, most of the major sports. But like, you know, I like competition, so I watch all kinds of things. But
You play all of those things?
in high school I did.
Oh.
Yeah, but never made it past high school.
Well, I mean, like, as like a community, I know a bunch of guys that go and play
Oh yeah,
basketball together
not
and stuff.
anymore. Like,
No?
not so much. No.
Now it's all music.
Yeah, the music I just watch. Just the eyes get the workout from music. It's not physical.
Yeah. So when we talk about, like, say, hieroglyphics, living legends, like, all of those groups, they're very, I want to say, conscious in what their delivery is. It always goes way deeper than just like rhyming and sounding good, right? Like, there's the reason why you guys are so loved, I think, by the masses, and not just in the Bay Area, is because you guys, like, the delivery, not only is it like full of passion, you can feel it, like physically, like feel it. If you go to a show, you're like, you can't help but be like, oh my God, you know? So that's why I was like, whoa, it's Domino.
Right.
But the lyricism is very intelligent. It's not just like, oh, buy this chain and buy this car and whatever what I call like the dumbing it down for the dumb people. This is for like intelligent people and people who think on a deeper level, right?
Yeah, I think their poetry is
Poetry.
more,
There you go.
yeah, it's more poetry. You know, I think everyone in hieroglyphics is really good with the English language and putting words together. And I think there's a conscious, I don't know if decision is the word, but there's a conscious choice to be progressive and different, and you know, have certain type of wordplay that not everyone else does.
Yeah.
And because they're all so good with the language, that they're able to say some profound things within the context of these styles and cadences that they're coming up with, you know. And so, but I think it starts with just their influences, that they wanted to be lyrical type of people and to stand out in that way, as opposed to other type of, you know, styles that some artists have, that they want to like attract women, or they want to talk about money, get money. I think the art of hip hop, the art of lyricism is important to the MCs in Hiero, and that's why when you hear them, they're kind of on their own level, you know, of style that isn't like, you know, it's everything is based on something, but they've been able to take their own Oakland Bay Area flavor and do it their way, which I think has, you know, worked well for everybody.
Yeah. Did you make the beats for Fantasy Island, like most of those?
No, I didn't make that one.
Which ones did you do?
On Full Circle album, I did.
Oh yeah, so I don't know why.
Fantasy Island
is one of the songs.
Yeah,
but
it's the first song. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did on Full Circle. I
Full
did
Circle.
Powers That Be, Make Your Move, Let It Roll, Classic, and I think 176s, which is like the last song on the album. And I want to say that's it. I think.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, so I did a bunch of them.
Who else? Is it Dell? No.
On that record, A+ did
A+,
a few.
that's right.
Opio he did Fantasy Island, he did Halo. I'm trying to think of other songs on that record. Full Circle was done by A+, the title track. I'm just drawing a blank on the other songs, but yeah, so it's basically me, A+, Opio did most of the production on that record. And I want to say, yeah, I think that was it. I'm not sure Dell did anything production on that record.
Why aren't you on the mic as well?
Because I think that when I met Hiero, I was rapping, but I realized that my rapping ability wasn't on par with theirs, but my beats were. And I had already kind of been started to get a little bit more into beats than rapping as it was even before I met them. So it was like they kind of finished the transition of me being a full-fledged producer than as opposed to rapping, and really I was still dabbling in it, but when I met them, I realized that they were on a certain level that I wasn't, but I knew my beats can hold my own with them, and so that's kind of was the final, like, okay, you're just a producer now.
And those beats, though, also the ones that you named, I can hear them in my head, right? And they're very complex too. Like they're just, you have to have a certain level of like talent to do stuff like that. Because I know people that make beats. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but yours are like next level of like, just you have to have an ear for it, right? Like you have to know this sound goes with this sound. It's gonna go here. You're like there's a reason why I call it in the lab, right? You're creating.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Amp Fiddler, rest in peace, who did played a lot of the instrumentation on my songs, in a lot of songs, not just mine, on that record. But yeah, like, again, I'm a student of music. Like, I guess, people seem to like our stuff, so I would say it's safe to say that I have a decent ear as far as of the stuff that I put together. I don't, I like what I do, and I have a certain sound that I'm trying to get, and it's not even a conscious sound. It's just like, if it feels right to me, then I feel like other people will probably like it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think that every beat is different, so, and I try not to have like one, okay, this is how I do it, and then I layer it with this. It's just kind of comes as it comes, and some beats are real simple and not much to them, and some have a lot more layers and instrumentation than others. It just depends. But yeah, I mean, I guess it's safe to say that I do have some sort of talent that people gravitate to because, I've been doing it for so long, and we've had success.
Yeah. Have you always been so humble? Because everything I ask you, and coming from like a fan who's followed since the early 2000s, but amongst most of my friends, everyone is like, oh my God, they're so intelligent, their beats are next level, like all of these things, like, and that's not just my friend group, that's obviously there's a Hiero Day, right? Yeah. The whole Bay Area comes out. Yeah. How do you stay, if this has always been your personality, how do you keep your head by not, you know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, oh my God.
I think
do you guys know what I'm trying to say?
I think that your natural personality, if you feel secure in who you are, I think who you were before you had success will still be the basis of your personality. You know what I'm saying? And so I think people that become famous and all of a sudden become gassed up and arrogant, I think they had a deep insecurity to start with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I think that I just, you know what I mean? Like, I appreciate, that people love us, and I know that it means a lot of things, but, I don't feel like that's the end all to me. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I feel like you still got to be a good person. You still got to have respect for everybody. And I think that I would be my personality regardless of whether we did music or not. And again, like I said, I feel like I have a strong sense of self. So being successful and having fans didn't give me any added juice to be like, hey, like I'm on a pedestal, like, because also there's a lot of guys that I aspire to be, in the industry too, and so I never feel like I'm at the top. I always feel like I could do better, and so like there's always somebody to humble me as well, to be like, well, I think I'm the shit. And then I hear, a Pete Rock beat or a Primo beat or an A+ beat, and I'm like, dang, I need to get on this tighter. You know what I mean? And I think that's how you continue to grow and be better to when you don't feel like you've made it. You always feel like the best beat is the next beat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Versus, make your move and everyone loves it, and you know what I mean? Like, then you rest on that, then you never make nothing else because you're just satisfied,
Yeah, I love that.
I think that's probably a lot of how I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, I had a question and then it just went away. What are you most proud of? And that can be in your artistic life or your regular life.
I think I'm most proud of artistically. I think I mentioned it, I touched on it, is just having a proper legacy that anybody that knew me or my kids, when they have kids, they can point to and say, look what dad or granddad did. You know what I mean? I think, or someone who doesn't know me to be like, man, that Hiero, it's like me saying, like, man, like those, that I could name like many producers, like somebody who, I guess Sly Stone is a perfect example. Like I listen to his stuff and it takes me somewhere, and I'm thinking like, man, that's a legacy. You know what I'm saying? And just peeping that greatness that's gonna continue forever. And I think that's kind of what I'm most proud of, is I think that we've done enough that I feel like I left something for my kids and people that are fans of our music to be proud of, and even people to discover later on, like I discovered music that was way ahead of my time, And so that's what I'm most proud of, is on an artistic level. On a personal level, I think it's just being a good example for my kids, for them to, I can be my whole self and be proud of that, and not just be like, like, hopefully they don't see that I'm this way or that way. I feel like I could be my whole self around my kids, and I set that good example, and also that I'm present. I'm present with them, so I'm proud of that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Has being a part of a group like this helped your personal evolution as you grow? Do you need more clarification, or?
No, I mean,
Okay.
I think, well, I think because of, you're dealing with so many different people and different personalities. When I was managing everybody, like, it kind of helped me figure how to probably be deep down. It probably made me a better father, because it's like dealing with, and again, like when I met them, most of these guys were in high school still, and so like, I think being able and dealing with all these personalities and be able to get along and also lead them is also, because I was older and I had more of a business sense than maybe they did, that it put me in a position to lead and to be an older fatherly figure, even though I was 3-4 years older, but it was still, I was in the position that a lot of fathers would be, to where you're leading a family or you're leading kids or whatever, to where I'm like, all right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this, and no, we shouldn't do that. And so I think that definitely translates into me becoming a better person as far as directing, myself and others through life. Having a leadership type of, that type of is in me, to kind of be a leader of men. And so I think it's made me a better person to be able to be with Hiero, to be able to kind of go through the trials and tribulations and all the different personalities, and still have success. And maybe you have some differences, but you come out, on the end better or closer, because we have the common goal of music, love for hip hop.
Yeah. How would you describe your creativity? Like, a lot of people get their, not downloads, well, for me, it's like I feel like I get like a download, and I'm like, yes, I have this idea. Let me go forth with it. For you, how do you become inspired, or can you just create that?
Um, yeah, I wish I could just create it whenever I wanted to, but you know, a lot of it is mood. I get inspired usually by other music. Like usually my process starts where I start listening to records, you know, and um, usually like that will send me on my way. You know what I mean? And it may not end up what I was listening to, but that usually gets my creative mind going because there's the way that I listen to music. I always say this: I listen to music in layers, you know, as a producer. So when I'm listening to a song, I'm listening to all the elements individually in my head, you know. So I'm hearing the drums and I'm focused on those, and then I might focus on the flute or whatever. And so that kind of, you know, I get stimulated by listening to music, and then that gives me ideas, you know. And like I said, sometimes it may be close to the initial plan or thing that I heard, but a lot of times, by the time it's done, it doesn't sound anything like the thing that stimulated it, you know. But to answer your question fully, it's really other music that gets me started.
Yeah. Did you watch the Wu-Tang Saga on Hulu, the show?
No, you know, I never watched the live show. I watched their documentary that
Okay.
was on around the same time, but I never watched the show, no.
There's one episode I encourage you to watch, at least this episode, where it paints a picture of how RZA puts together his beats, and it has like a violinist, and it'll like spotlight that person, and it visually shows those of us who don't do that, like what happens in his mind, and it was put together so artistically that I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is incredible. Like now I can understand like how he hears things and sees things, and the way you were just describing that was,
Yeah, I have to check that out.
yeah.
I had planned to. It just like, I just, you know, just never got around to it. But yeah, I'm curious about that. I mean, I'm like a super huge fan of like music documentaries. So like any of the classic making of documentaries, I'm there. I don't care if it's a group that I don't even like. You know what I mean? Just the process of creation, particularly songs that become iconic, is always hella compelling to me. And I'm like, man, I can watch those for days. So I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah, I mean the show was produced by RZA himself, so he's telling a story.
I know of somebody who's a couple of people that are associated with that show, and so yeah, I mean I know it's a good thing, and I'm just never got around to it in all honesty, but I definitely plan to watch it.
Yeah, especially that one. That was incredible.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah. So would you have any advice for anybody out there who not necessarily wants to start making music, but has a passion like you did and knows that they have a passion for it, but they're stuck in maybe like the typical 9-to-5 where they're like, oh, it's too risky? What would you say to someone like that that's on the fence about, should I follow my passion or should I play it safe?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what your priorities in life, right? And so I think my answer to somebody that's 20 with no kids would be a lot different than somebody who's 30 with kids. And so you have to find the time to do it. Like, and when you have a job, it's not easy, right? And so, because a lot of things about the creative process, it isn't like, here's my time card, I'm starting. Like, that's not how being creative works. And so but you have to spend that time in front of it. And maybe you're not feeling it, maybe you are, but if you don't get in front of your keyboard or whatever, then nothing happens. And so you have to put in the time. This is for people that are busy and stuff. You have to find those moments to where you can attempt to be creative. And sometimes it'll flow, sometimes it won't, but at least if you're taking a shot, then you have a chance. But I'm from the mentality of follow your dreams, you know what I'm saying? Because that's what my mom said to me, you know. And so it was like, you know, basically, you know, I was going to college and I music was my passion, and I felt like there were some opportunities that I needed to chase after, that if I was continuing to go to college wouldn't afford me the chance to. And she basically, my mom, was a great line. She says, "I don't care what you do, but just don't make any bills for me." You know? And so at the time I was going to school, and I had a part-time job, and I had this other opportunity. I go, well, I guess I'm keeping my part-time job. And so basically I, stopped going to San Francisco State, and with the idea that if this doesn't work out, I'll go back, because school will be there.
Yeah.
But it did work out. And so, I'm happy that I took that shot. You got to take the shot, because another thing is that next thing you know, you're 30 or 40 or older, and you're thinking about what could have been, regrets. You got to take that shot and deal with the hardships of the road of becoming a successful musician. Is a very, a lot of ramen and, you know what I'm saying, and beans and rice, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so be able to put with that, at least so you get your shot.
So let's talk about that difficult road, right? So how do you stay focused on, like, your eye on the prize, I guess? How do you stay focused in that, like, say this is your path, and then there's that middle part that's like really, really tough to get through, where you're like, I just want, most people give up at that point. What advice do you have for the people who are there, who are working on their passions and like going for it, but it started to get really, really hard?
Well, I'll say this. Everyone who's successful in music has a rejection story, right? Everybody. Everyone has a rejection story. RZA was signed, had a solo career, he got dropped, you know what I mean? Same with Jizza, like, these things happen. And that's even getting to a point. But there's people that were before that never got deals, got said no, and then next thing you know, they broke. And so I think don't let one or two or even three rejections discourage you. If you really love it and you really believe in it, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going. You keep going until you can't afford to. You know what I mean? Or, like I said, you got kids and you got priorities. It's understand that you got to let dreams go sometimes. But up until then, you take your shot, no matter how many, bricks or, things get in front of you. You keep going, because, as I said, everybody has a rejection story.
Yeah.
Jay-Z, perfect example. Nobody wanted to sign him, and they said, we'll just put out our own shit. And next thing you know, he's the biggest rapper,
Yeah.
And so everybody does.
You hear that?
Keep going.
Oh, yeah. Is there anything else that you want to share, or maybe give advice?
Just that, Hiero's still doing stuff. In fact, we're in the warehouse of our building that we own. It's Hiero building, and we have a studio and offices in here. And so, but as we speak, before I walked up, we're working on music, and we have a new Hiero album coming out.
Oh, when?
I'm not sure when it's going to come, but we have a new album that we're working and finishing up. But it'll be out, at least, if not late this year, early next year. But it'll be coming. And so, I know it's been a while. But we all are finally, got together, and we've done a bunch of songs, and we're getting close to being finished. So look out for that.
Yeah, and you guys are going on tour, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll be on tour with Deltron 3030, Del and Deltron 3030.
It's sold out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
There's three. We added a third show, so you might be able to get that. But
in San Francisco?
Yeah. It's on August 1st. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah.
We're going to Deltron 3030 tour. I'll be out on that. Souls of Mischief are on tour. There's a Hieroglyphics show at Red Rocks in Colorado. If you can make it out there, it's like Atmosphere, Hiero, Dilated Peoples, Living Legends, There's a bunch of people on that bill. So if you can make it out to Red Rocks, which I recommend you going because it's one of the better places to watch the show.
Yeah.
That's in it's early September, and then there will likely be a Hiero tour early next year.
Woo! Awesome. All right.
So make sure you make it out and come see something.
Yeah. All right, Domino. Thank you for your time and speaking to me in the BU community. And always remember to be who?
Be you.
Thank you. Bye.